Hey everyone, it's Robert from Dancegate. We have a very special guest today.
Mark Zelinski from Mark Zelinski Photographic Design.
Mark is the publisher of this amazing book, which we will get to shortly. Just a quick thank you to Sandy Morden at Morden's Organic Farm Store, where we are here. Sandy unfortunately couldn't join us this morning because her father passed away on Tuesday. So our sincere regrets, Sandy, and we'll connect with you after. So Mark, this has been a almost 14 plus year journey.
Yeah, I started shooting this book in 2012 and it just arrived on our shores 2 days ago.
Where did this passion for photography and for photographic storytelling begin?
Well, I was actually trained as an artist, not as a photographer. I went to Ontario College of Art and Design and graduated as the top student in 1979. Won the Governor General's Medal for my artwork, but I also was doing photography and film just as a side thing. And the Royal Canadian Golf Association asked me if I would shoot the Canadian Open in 1979. So I said, yes, I'll do that. But honestly, I had no idea how to do that. And I learned on the job.
That's one of the things in our short time that we've gotten to know each other. Mark is very modest. To be the top student at OCAD is actually an incredible honor, given the reputation. And how did you know that you wanted to attend that particular institution?
I went to Sheridan College and studied art fundamentals right after high school. And decided that OCAD was the school that I really wanted to be at. So I applied, got in, and I took general studies and independent studies. So I really just kind of made up my own curriculum. Fine art, painting, design of all kinds, sculpture.
Did you know going in you actually wanted to be an artist?
I'm really not good at anything else. So I knew that art was my destiny. And but I really had no plans on being a photographer. And it was through music that I actually became a photographer. They had a sound studio at the school. And I wanted to do a soundtrack for something. And you can't really do a soundtrack for paintings or sculptures. So I picked up a camera and really started shooting Kodachrome slides to do a soundtrack to those images. Which ended up winning a scholarship.
Oh my God, that's
that's
amazing.
That was easy. So having studied design and composition, it was really quite easy to adapt to photography. I just had to learn a little bit of the technical skills. But when I graduated in 1979, I had done a film. The film was called Movement in White, and it was I photographed it all in blizzards.
Oh, amazing.
Because that was the
only... a winter setting?
Winter settings. And the reason for that was nobody wanted the cameras in blizzards. So I didn't have to compete for them. So
that was my thinking.
And so I went out in the worst conditions and did this film, which ended up, I sold it to CBC.
Wow.
And they played it for about 10 years.
You had been a very young creative at that time.
That's right. Yeah, I was 24.
To do that, was there actually anything you had to pitch to get in, or opportunities presented itself, so you just went with the flow?
So I just kind of went with the flow. So when the Royal Canadian Golf Association asked me to shoot the Canadian Open, that was a pretty high profile event.
Definitely.
So one of my photos ended up in Sports Illustrated.
Oh my gosh.
And within a week, the Toronto Blue Jays had asked me to photograph their games. So I started working for them. Within a couple of years, I was shooting for the National Film Board. I was the official photographer for Queen's Park through Intergovernmental Affairs, and photographed all the heads of state that visited Toronto for the next 10 years.
You know, sometimes it's one's personal journey, one's life journey, just either flows and you are just part of the process and it was meant to be. You were destined to do that. Or the other thing is you were in situations that presented itself, and because you were so good that others saw that talent in you.
Well, I think one thing that I haven't been afraid to do is go out and try, to put myself out there. And so I did. I pounded the pavement and went around to all the government agencies, to all the production houses in the early 80s. And it paid off.
It definitely paid off. And with your publishing company and with the books that you have created, share a little bit about some of the first books you created.
In 1984, I was asked to volunteer to photograph Outward Bound Canada. It's a personal development organization. It's kind of perceived as a survival school, but it's really about personal development. And it's around the world. But so for selfish reasons, I said, yes, I'll do it. And went up to Northern Ontario, photographed whitewater and rock climbing, mountain climbing, and became very interested in the organization and decided I was approached by a small publisher and asked if I would like to do a book on it. So for the next 5 years, I actually traveled around the world to all the Outward Bound schools in the world. There was about 35 in about 25 countries at the time.
That must have been an incredible journey.
That book was published by an American publisher, and Prince Philip was the patron of Outward Bound at the time. So he did the foreword in the book.
Incredible.
So that book got a lot of international attention, and it actually helped elevate Outward Bound worldwide because it was before the internet. A few years later, I found myself moving to the Hamilton-Burlington area and decided to do a book on Hamilton in 1999. And Lincoln Alexander, who I met at Queen's Park and who was a good friend at the time, he was the former lieutenant governor.
Incredible.
Did the foreword to that book. So that was my first self-published book.
That's very meaningful to have people who have platforms, not only endorse, but to give you a pat on the back.
I've been very, very fortunate with that. So that book was very successful, and that was launched in 1999. It sold out within 6 months, and it gave me kind of the courage to publish more books. So this is my 10th book, but my books that heal that I did in 2010. That's kind of an interesting part of that, because I've donated to date 9,000 copies of my books to charities,
which is amazing,
mostly in Canada, who distribute the books worldwide, to throughout Africa, Asia, South America, Caribbean.
Share a little bit about Books That Heal, how you came up with that name, but also you're more than presenting photos, you're more than selling books. It's tied into your core values. So speak a little bit about that.
For 35 years, really, I traveled the world to about 80 countries worldwide. And whenever I had the opportunity, I would travel through villages and remote areas of the world and meet people and ask them if I could take a portrait of them. Now, I wasn't able to ask them verbally in most cases. So the communication was really without words. And hundreds, thousands of people gave me permission to take their photos. And being in some war areas of the world, particularly Africa, in 1990, I was on the border of Mozambique in a refugee camp. Beautiful photos of mothers with their children. And I didn't realize until after I had done the photos that in many cases, these women were the survivors of larger families that did not make it out of Mozambique. So the rest of the family had been killed on the way. And I realized that these photos were not something that I could really benefit from commercially. I couldn't sell these photos. So that gave me the idea for the book Untitled, which is a book that I have donated about 4,000 of to charities worldwide, and they're used for so many different things. They're used as gifts to rescue child slaves in Asia, for example. And there's just a multitude of uses. Those books have been useful to charities and communities around the world.
And Mark was kind enough also, proceeds of books sold through Danscape. He's going to contribute 40% of that. So check in later in our description to do that. Untitled. A book with no words.
That's right.
And normally the old adage is a picture speaks more than 1,000 words. So how many photos was in that book? And how many in this book?
Okay, so in Untitled, I believe there's about 180 photos of people from 70 countries around the world.
So that's 180,000 words, metaphorically. But you clearly were conveying something. It wasn't that you didn't have the option to name the book.
I didn't want it to be limited by language or by ideology or even, by nationality. It's really a look at the human race as a family. And that's the way it should be.
Which, through your journey, leads us to Niagara Escarpment, Land Between Waters. This book has a combination of photos, but also the written language, clearly English. So share a bit about the process, because it is a 14-year chapter. That's a lifetime for a lot of people. Yeah,
so this is my biggest book. It's 320 pages, 600 photos in this. So
600 photos, really, that's over 600,000 words. Sorry, this is background. I crunch numbers. I'm kidding.
This is a continuation of a book that I did in 2017 called The Heart of Turtle Island, the Niagara Escarpment, which is a book about the Niagara Escarpment, its ecosystems, its species, and its communities, including the Indigenous communities in a big way. That book was very successful. It came out, as I mentioned, in 2017. And I found that the stock of those books was running out in 2018. So I decided, well, I'm going to do a sequel book to it.
Nice.
So I've been working on that through the pandemic. Of course, there were
which affected all of us.
It slowed it down somewhat.
But that was creative use of that time.
It was, actually, So during the pandemic, actually, I was the photographer for Cape Croker Park and Anishinaabe cultural experiences up at on the Saugeen Bruce Peninsula. So a lot of the photos for the book were actually taken within that period. So this book, there are 15 chapters written by 15 different authors. 6 of them are Indigenous, writing about their communities. The two forwards in the book are also written by Indigenous peoples. Carolyn King,
yes,
the founder of the Moccasin Identifier Initiative.
You introduced us at your first book launch in Toronto. A beautiful soul. I mean, just got get that.
She's a wonderful lady.
Along with, there was another Indigenous representative who spoke.
Oh, Tim Johnson.
Tim Johnson, exactly. And also Brooke Holdsworth. I really connected with all of them, but those ones in particular.
Yeah, the other forward's written by Josh Ishkak-Hogan, who's a spiritual leader on Manitoulin Island. He's from Okwamacong First Nation, but he really does ceremony for all the 6 nations on Manitoulin Island. So I was really lucky to have him.
Yes.
And so it's a really involved book. The CEO of the Bruce Trail wrote a chapter. The CEO of the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy wrote a chapter. The CEO of the Greenbelt, the Ontario Greenbelt, wrote a chapter. The chair on community sustainability worldwide for UNESCO, conservation leaders.
Exactly.
So all of those people I just mentioned are going to be speaking at my next event, which is the World Book Launch, Wednesday, April 29th at Tourism Hamilton, 28 James Street.
Local, everyone.
It's a big one.
It is.
So that's from 6:30 till 9:30 p.m. And there's a room for 150 people. So I think it's going to fill up very quickly.
Definitely.
And we have Tim Johnson as well, who's the descendant of Joseph Brant. He's a Mohawk
Burlington
leader.
connection.
Definitely a Burlington connection. Also, Alan O'Jig Corbier is going to be speaking. I just found it yesterday. And he's
wonderful.
A famous historian. He was a prof at Harvard University, and he teaches at York University. But he's an Anishinaabe historian from Jiging First Nation on Manitoulin Island. Everybody's trying to get this man to come and speak.
And you got him!
And he rarely does it. And I just got a text from him yesterday saying, I'll be there. I'm going to speak. So that's just fantastic.
That's incredible. So, you know, one thing that struck me about the book itself is it merges different perspectives. Science and technology, environmentalism, to the indigenous voice, which historically has not always provided opportunities for Indigenous voices.
That's right.
But also business. You have found those who share common values with that.
With supporters of this book are 4 conservation authorities in Ontario, which is fantastic.
It is.
A lot of different conservation organizations. But just the support and the opening of doors to the Indigenous world is amazing to me. Without the Indigenous perspective of the love for the earth, the love for the land, and the recognition that everything is alive, you know, as immigrants to this country, we imagine that we're separate from the water, the land, the wind, the rocks, the trees, and the air, but we're not. And through that Indigenous perspective that I've learned through a lifetime of traveling and living and hiking with Indigenous peoples worldwide, I'm always amazed at their perspective on how the land, the earth, Mother Earth needs to be loved and honored. If Western science can blend their knowledge with this Indigenous wisdom, then I think there's a better outcome for our future.
Definitely. A lot of you know Beverly and I as former Canadian North American Ballroom champions, and we have that piece of us. But my career trajectory was in marketing communications for tech software company.
I see.
So I have a really deep appreciation for storytelling and language, and how wonderful it is that the storytelling traditions of the Indigenous peoples is carried through to you through your photography. Do you have some favorite photos?
The cover shot is quite interesting to me. So I was working on a project called the Indigenous Cultural Map with an Indigenous charity called Plenty Canada. We hired this young Onondaga and Anishinaabe girl named Kara Sheehan, who's 13 years old. And we were working with Niagara Parks, who actually gave us a police escort down into a part of the Niagara Gorge where people aren't allowed to go. We were allowed to pick our spot and get our view of the American Falls in behind. I asked Kara to try to be as airborne as possible. So she's actually doing a smoke dance. You barely touch the ground, actually. And it's quite aerobic and athletic. So she was able to do it.
Oh, what a beautiful cover.
So that became the cover for the book. So that's
amazing.
That's one of my favorite photos.
Of all the photos, and she must have been thrilled.
She's going to be present at the World Book Launch, and she may even do a dance.
That'd be amazing.
She's 21 now.
Yes, so, that's what Mark had conveyed. We were hoping that she would come today, but
she couldn't come today.
But for the event, how beautiful and how appropriate. Because at the end of the day, Dancescape also is about culture. Our community spans from Asian, British, who Beverly is, to Mexican, to immigrants who have come to our country. And thank you for taking the time today to speak with us. This is all part of our desire to highlight interesting people from a community. A lot of social media is just very quick, scroll, scroll, scroll.
Right.
We don't care about the algorithm. We just want the story to be told. Usually, as part of our interviews, we do a dance challenge.
Okay.
I thought today it was more appropriate to challenge everyone out there. One of the programs we do is Dance Flow, incorporating Qigong and Tai Chi. And I think that is a mindful appropriateness to doing it here. So, Mark, have you done Tai Chi or Qigong before?
I do.
Oh, good. There you go. We will put some music on.